esteemed panel here today to talk about not only how great Boca is, but why they're coming here. Penn-Florida has been here 32 years, developed a lot of properties. I'm finishing it. We'll be doing Via Meisner for the next 2 to 3 years, but we have other projects en route, large-scale assisted living facility, 80 acres called University Village north of the airport. We'll be telling you about all those in the future, but tonight it's about bringing more and more people to make Boca as great as it is. As we know, Boca's on fire. There's great projects, not only what we're doing, but what our other esteemed friends are doing in the neighborhoods, both from a residential, commercial, and retail standpoint. I'm pleased to introduce Jonathan Miller, who's joined us, come in from the big city, and I'm glad to have him. Jonathan's going to take us through the day, and as we know, we're here to talk about why people keep coming and how we can encourage them to do so. So thank you. I hope you'll stay afterwards and enjoy the wine and cocktails and hors d'oeuvres. Thanks very much.
Thank you. Hello, everybody.
Hello, Jonathan.
All right, that's more like it. Just a couple of quick things about who I am, and then we're going to get to the heart of the discussion with we have a great group of experts on the topics we're going to cover. I've been in the real estate valuation business for 33 years. I started when I was 5. And I also publish, or Douglas Elliman publishes a series of market reports that I write. And one of the regions of the U.S. that I cover is South Florida, Boca included. And one of the things, and Jay and I, every quarter when we publish the information, Jay and I have these conversations about, like, which market is stronger. And almost every quarter for the last couple of years, Boca Raton has differentiated itself, and it's very different than the narrative of the housing market in the Northeast. I cover about 35 different markets across the U.S. For Douglas Elliman, their footprint, and the story is very different in South Florida than it is everywhere else. So we want to touch on that, and specifically Boca and some of the reasons why. So we have a great group of panelists. What I'm going to ask each panelist to do is to say their name, what their expertise is, and then we're going to get into the discussion. We'll start with Rochelle.
Hello and welcome. For anyone standing in the back who would like to take a seat, we do have a few seats available here in the front. Don't be shy. You're welcome to make your way.
We won't call on you.
There will be no quiz. I'm Rochelle Cavalier. I am the Vice President of Sales for Douglas Elliman Development, and I oversee the project, the residences at Mandarin Oriental, Boca Raton.
Good afternoon, everybody. My name is Jay Parker. I'm the CEO of Douglas Elliman in Florida, and I think I'm just really good at finding great people.
Jessica Del Vecchio, I'm the Economic Development Manager for the City of Boca Raton.
I'm Michael Kravitz, and Tax Manager for Engineering Tax Services in West Palm Beach. And I'm a licensed CPA, and glad here to share any information that you're looking for relative to taxation.
And it's interesting, Michael, because there's a lot of the reasons that we're here and we're seeing all this positive is through the mystery of tax law. One of the things that has happened beginning, and the topic of this get-together is about tax migration, the idea that we've had in the New York City metro area, which is one of the highest taxed and highest priced property markets in the United States. We've had for years many the wealthy sort of on the fence. Hey, should I go to Florida now? Should I wait? What should I do? And the new tax law that came into effect on January 1st, 2018, I think for many pushed them to make that decision, but it's not exclusively to the demographic of the wealthy, which we're going to talk about. But it's pretty amazing. And then the other thing is, to use a really tired baseball analogy, everybody says, hey, what inning are we in, right? And I'd say we're still driving up to the ballpark. I mean, this is just getting started. This is new, and the reason why it's new is because what's happening in the city, or in the Northeast New York City metro area, is basically the new law. The key attribute of it is caps on how much you can basically write off, and they relate to salt, which this is such a lame joke, but I call it. I was raised salt meant strategic arms limitation treaty, but now it means state and local taxes. And state and local taxes are capped, and so is property taxes. And that's something that is making the cost of home ownership in other markets more expensive. And you're looking at low or no tax markets like Florida is all of a sudden having an additional advantage between the weather and all sorts of other advantages you've always had. So it's kind of interesting. What I'd like to do first is, I'd like to ask Michael, since this is the first time in my life that I've ever really wanted to know about taxes. and what I'd love to do is just to give us a 50-cent overview of what the salt tax issue is.
Well, first of all, salt and the definition of tax migration mainly is going from a high tax state to a low tax state. Examples of that, of course, would be New York and California, high tax states. Florida, of course, is a low tax state because there's zero income tax. That's one of the driving factors with respect to the tax migration. Additionally, though, with the recent tax law change of reducing the real estate tax as an itemized deduction to only $10,000, I personally have seen people just have their jaws drop when they realize how much more money they had to pay in taxes. From a wealthy perspective, I'm saying this too, mainly, because I've seen a lot of people paying $25,000 and $35,000 in real estate taxes, which aren't that unusual. You drop that down, cut off $20,000 of that, you come up with a very big tax bite. So to offset that is you come to a low tax state like Florida, and it helps to minimize that particular reduction in real estate taxes. Just to give you a real quick overview though, 2000 to 2017, they had the largest, what they call net migration between states, with about 14 million people moving from high tax states to low tax states. Now with the tax reduction that I've referred to, particularly the reduction in the real estate taxes, it's predicted that high tax states such as California and New York will lose about 6% of their populations by 2028. And the zero and low tax states like Florida will experience about a 25% population growth, is what they're expecting.
Let's put supply and demand into the equation, and that's one of the things we're seeing now. Jessica, one of the things that we know, when I think of the New York City metro, I think of Wall Street and financial services, and drivers of big income. We've had a little bit of uptick in sort of the, I want to say .com, but sort of the tech sector. However, the Wall Street sort of sector of high wage earning is pretty flat, and yet here there's some. I read somewhere that something like 15,000 new securities industry employees came to Florida or were created this year. Maybe you could talk a little bit about that.
So we put that under the sector of financial services industries. That's hedge funds. Right now we're working a hedge fund out of Connecticut. I know you're up in Connecticut. We signed an NDA, so we can't say who. But they'll open a small office here, which they have to have the address for Greenwich for their billion-dollar hedge fund. But the executives still want to come to Florida. They still want to take advantage of the low taxes. They want the access to the airport. 70,000 flights come through that airport. We're a city of 94,000 people. Figure that out. That's a lot of flights coming through. So these are the players that use that executive airport. Right now, we moved in about 6 months ago. We moved in Stover Glass. Stover Glass is an RIA. They've been on Wall Street for 50 years. Never had an office off of Wall Street. They still have their headquarters on Wall Street, but they moved to Boca Raton. Their seat.
Why?
Well, for the taxes,
But not just the taxes.
it's not the taxes. I mean, that's great. The execs come, woo, for the taxes. But lock me in, and the seatbelt. Okay, so the executives come for the taxes. You know, that's why these high-paying jobs, and they're smaller. We're not seeing projects with, you know, we have modernizing medicine with 800 jobs, but these execs, they make $200,000, $300,000, $400,000, $500,000. That's a lot of money to them. But also the quality of life. I mean, look around. You can't beat Boca Raton or even South Florida for what we offer. What we talked about, a commute. You know, there is no getting on the train for 2 hours and then coming and getting to the office, and you know, we just don't have that. We have roads and we have tri-rail and all of that, but it really is a lifestyle that sells itself as long as we get them here to show
You don't
them.
have enough sort of gray, overcast weather here for my
No, we send that up north, along with the taxes.
And are there other industries besides Wall Street that are being attracted to Boca and the surrounding areas?
Yes, so we go through EFI, which is the Enterprise Florida Fund for Incentives. We actually incentivize companies to come here. We see a lot in technology. We have a number of corporate headquarters that we've moved here over the last 4 years. Big names for us, Shoes for Crews, Mobile Health, Modernizing Medicine. Right there, that's about 8, 9, 10, like about 1,500 jobs to our city. High-paying jobs. So we do corporate, you know, we keep it diversified. We have healthcare, we have finance, we have technology. So yes, we see a variety of things. We do that by design to diversify.
And so the idea is more jobs,
More jobs, more
but
people.
higher paying jobs.
Yes, because we
relatively.
want them to truly come in and live, work, play. We want them to live here.
But in terms of the demographics coming here, this isn't a narrative about a bunch of hedge fund people just coming to Boca, right? This is a younger.
It's more than that, yes. So we're aging younger. About 3 months ago, Forbes reached out to our office and they wanted analytical data. They wanted to know what's going on in our city with all these projects coming online downtown. You know, they want to know what average income is, average age, level of education for the residents. And as we provided the demographics, what we all noticed was that we're aging younger, which was a surprise to almost all of us. We use Census Bureau, so we go 10 years back and 10 years forward, maybe 11 years by the time we were looking at the data. And in 11 years, we'll be 3 years older. I mean, I would love to be
Really?
only 3 years older in 11 years.
Yeah.
I mean, you can't bottle that. But that shows that we are aging younger. So these companies are bringing younger talent in. We have the universities here. You see it yourselves. People are coming in, buying these homes. They're knocking them down. They're moving their families in. Just last year, Boca donated 14 acres to the state to put in an elementary school. That
Right.
shows that we're truly aging younger.
So the bottom line is that the companies are coming here because of the affordability, but also because they can find talent
Correct.
to work for these
Correct.
firms. Right. Interesting. Go ahead.
I would just add, you say that we can't bottle this age youth fountain, but in many ways, that's exactly what's happening. If you look at the development in Boca, historically the luxury development was always right on the ocean. And why do people want the ocean? Because they wanted to go sit on the beach all day long. What's happening now in a lot of major cities is that people are looking for a lifestyle where they can walk, where they can be entertained, where they don't necessarily sit on the beach all day, where the beach is still an option, but the lifestyle is generated by doing all the things that keep them active, keep them engaged. And it's no coincidence that products like the Mandarin are coming into these markets in this way. They're speaking specifically to the demographic that we know is attracted to this market inherently, but now augmented powerfully by the tax laws. And I think, and Jonathan and I have talked about this extensively, we think this is literally just the tip of the iceberg. And we hear numbers like a 25% surge. I think it will absolutely happen. And I think we also slightly underestimate the complexity. Forget about the tax complexity, but also just in general, the complexity of picking up your life, potentially your business, and all of your employees, and moving them to a different state. The drive to do it is 100% a reality. The process by which that happens is going to take time. But I can tell you, we have a relocation division in our company. The phone's ringing off the hook. A lot of it is exploratory. What would it take? What can they buy? And a lot of times employers will say, we'll buy your home from you in New York or Connecticut or New Jersey or in California, and then we'll turn around and market that house, and we'll work with a company like Douglas Elliman to sell it, and we'll give you a credit towards what you're going to buy in South Florida. And a lot of them are focused on Boca because the values here are extraordinary. Even comparing Boca to markets like Miami, which obviously we're a proponent of all of South Florida, what you can buy here is less expensive on a price per foot basis than what you can buy in other major markets. So Boca really has a tremendous opportunity right now, and I think that's why we believe so firmly in Mandarin, residents at Mandarin Oriental, and everything that's happening in this market. And I personally believe, and sorry for rambling on, but I personally believe that you're going to start to see in Boca the same thing that you've seen in Miami over the last 10 years. Many, many, many more New York-based institutions calling Boca home, from restaurants to clubs to all kinds of ancillary clothing stores. They're all saying, hey, our customers are all moving to Florida. We can save money by opening in Florida. Our tax basis is lower. The cost is lower. Let's go explore Florida. And it's happening, and Boca's square in the middle of it.
Right, I'm going to ask Rochelle something specific, but I just want to put this in, like, plant this flag on the beach that New Yorkers or the Northeast are the new foreign buyers. If you think about it, all the the South American, Central American countries that were huge sources of demand have their own serious economic problems, and they pulled back. But a lot of that missing demand has been replaced by the Northeast before the tax law, and this is sort of exaggerating that further.
It's not new.
It's not new.
It's not new, right? So during the recession and coming out of the recession, as you well recall, when the Canadian dollar was at parity, we were like, bienvenue à la hit, right? So like our Canadian friends, they were taking advantage of a unique set of economic circumstances where it made so much sense to come and live in South Florida, if one were able, right?
Right.
And then, we saw pre-recession, right, is particularly well into South Florida, in the Miami area, bienvenidos a Florida, right? So same thing, people having economic circumstances.
I took 5 years of French in high school. That's all I got. I'm not following. Go ahead.
You get the point, Jonathan. So the idea is, tax migration and economic, coming to a new place for economic reasons is not new. And what we're seeing right now, if we go hyper-focused on Boca Raton, is that we are now ramping up to meet a demand that we are foreseeing. So Boca Raton, going back like 30, 40 years ago, of course that was before my time. Love you, Jay Parker. Really. So before my time, Boca Raton was highly, highly seasonal. So we're talking like 50-50 split. People just emptied out of here after Mother's Day or whatever spring holiday, and then they came back in the fall. So we're finding now it's far less seasonal. People are far less preoccupied with, parking themselves on the beach and roasting. They're much more interested in walkable areas, and you can see the development in the downtown corridor. The residences at Mandarin Oriental Boca Raton is but one project. Even 5 years ago, it was like, I would like new and I would like Boca.
Didn't exist.
We were like, sorry, doesn't exist. And so now we have multiple projects that are specifically catering to a more sophisticated buyer, an ultra high net worth buyer in a lot of cases. They have certain size requirements. They have certain.
I'm going to ask you about that. What is like the high net worth or the celebrity or the sort of luxury buyer? Like what are they looking for now compared to 5 years ago?
So interestingly, what we're seeing in Boca Raton specifically, in terms of ultra high net worth, high visibility, I'm a member of the sports and entertainment division of Douglas Elliman. So that's a little background why he's asking me that question. So I worked with a number of athletes who are moving to the Boca Raton area, and
She never gets me Knicks tickets.
I haven't worked with a Nick yet, actually. I'll put that on my bucket list. So they're increasingly young. They increasingly are young, affluent, have families, and they have a really good idea of what's important to them. So Boca Raton is appealing for a number of reasons, and for this type of buyer, our schools are just wonderful. I mean, we have all A-rated public schools. We have 19 private schools.
So they're buying primary residences, not just a second home type experience for them.
Well, what's interesting about athletes specifically is that they're taxed based on where they're earning. So your away games are taxed at a different rate than your home games, and many athletes can choose where they live. So given our tax laws, you can choose how many months you're going to be in certain places in a lot of cases, and maybe your family can live in the primary residence during that time, and it is advantageous for them. So we have a number of athletes who actually aren't on Florida teams, interestingly enough.
Yeah.
And they're choosing Boca Raton because it is a family-friendly, up and coming,
Tax favorable.
very tax favorable.
Josie, just a quick, I want, because you brought up the subject of domicile, I wanted to ask Michael, I want to know what I have to do in New York to come here, like, what does the IRS see as how long I have to be here to declare this?
Get out your
It may
notepads.
not necessarily be the IRS,
Okay.
it's New York State
Right,
itself saying, no, you're not really a Florida resident.
right,
You're
right.
gonna pay me my money.
Yes, I'm familiar with that.
There's no cut and dry, but there are a number of steps. First is filing a Florida Declaration of Domicile. A Florida Declaration of Domicile is a document which allows you to declare that you reside and maintain a place of residence in Florida. It's recorded in the public records of the Florida county where you reside. Now, this is not a requirement to establish residency, but it certainly gives you a strong announcement that you're making this area of Florida your permanent home.
How many days do we need to worry about?
Hold on.
Okay.
The 183 rule,
Right.
I don't know if it works from a tax perspective, but it might. But I'm giving you the
No,
real key
please.
factors first. A driver's license. You must have a Florida driver's license if you drive in Florida. Again, this is another piece of evidence that if you don't have a driver's license in Florida, you're driving around, you're not proving to anybody that this is really your permanent home. Also registering your auto with the Department of Motor Vehicles. In addition to that, register to vote in Florida. I mean, these are all obvious things that if you are really moving here and want to take advantage of what's here, you should take these steps. Actually open a local bank account and transfer some of your funds to Florida. File final returns in New York, if you're from New York or California, to notify the previous states that you're no longer intending on being a resident of that state. And lastly, Florida has a homestead exemption, which goes a long way to establishing your domicile in Florida. Now, there is a 183-day rule among certain circuits of social groups in various parts of Florida that say if you stay away from New York for 183 days, you're okay. And I wouldn't go with just that.
Right.
It does not establish
So that's
residency.
just too simplistic.
That just
Right.
does not establish
I see.
residency.
Right,
Yeah, I just want
Especially if
to,
you have two homes.
right.
we've obviously had a tremendous amount of people that we're friendly with move here, and many of them have gone much further. Changing their phone number was always a difficult one. I'm giving up my 917 or a 212 for a 305 or a 561. Difficult, but establishes a commitment. Changing, this is another hard one. Dropping your memberships at a country club in New York and affiliating with a country club here. And I've had people tell me, you can't tell me to give up my membership, and I'm not telling you to do anything. I'm just saying when the state of New York comes after you, they're going to say, well, how can you tell us you're not here, but you still have a $200,000 golf club membership? Burial plots. Going somewhere and getting a burial plot, showing your intention to live here for a long term. I mean, hopefully a very long term. You don't need them for a while, but the list is long. But what I wanted to comment on was, when I first heard about tax reform, I thought it was almost too good to be true. I said, we're so great, and there's so many incredible things that are organically happening in the state of Florida, from pretty much the entire state, from Jupiter down on the East Coast and from Tampa down on the West Coast. It's really becoming a melting pot for this transfer of wealth. But interestingly to me is that this concept of tax transfers or tax refugees, this concept is consistent with global patterns. They've had this happen all over the world. It's happened in Canada, it's happened in most Latin American countries, it's happened throughout the Middle East. Whenever there's a political stimulant to drive people to make a move, the reactions are painfully clear. And we've seen that happen in many, many places, and I think we should grab a hold of this, like developers like Penn-Florida have, and really double down on this market so we can be the beneficiaries. Because I'll tell you, one of the things that is most significant from the people that we've spoken with, they want to make themselves, they want to move in. They don't want to wait 5 years. They don't want to hear about it in a plan. And so we're pushing Penn-Florida, and they're committed and moving aggressively to complete construction. And that's what people want. They are going to come. We should embrace it. And I want to make one more comment, and it's separate from tax reform. As real estate professionals or by people that are benefiting from this market, make sure if you're going to talk about the market, you understand it and you read the details carefully. Because there was recently an article published in one of the local publications that said the market's in a downward spiral. And they talked about the number of units that have traded in a particular market. But what they didn't say in as big and bold letters is that while the number of units decreased, the actual dollar volume increased. So that doesn't mean the market's spiraling. That just means the less expensive units are trading less frequently, but the more expensive units are actually trading so much more that they're making up on a dollar for dollar volume for what's not happening in the low end. This is directly aligned with what all of us are talking about. Wealthy people are moving here. Now don't think that we live in an ignorant world where all we care about is the wealthy people. Because what that does is they spend money. And it generates more jobs, and they bring more people here, and they need more talent, and it raises the bar. And they say if you can make it in New York, you can make it anywhere. That's because it's so darn hard there. And so the harder you make it here, the higher we raise the bar, the better this market becomes. And that's why you see products which are the top of the totem pole, like the Residence in Mandarin Oriental, coming to market here. There was no reason to have a branded residential product in this market 20 years ago because people just didn't care. But now they're saying, we want the best, and Penn-Florida is going to deliver the best, so line up and talk to Rochelle.
And just one more sort of comment about the market is that 10, 15 years ago, South Florida had a reputation as being a speculative market. You know, that it was flipping, it was carpenters and nurses quitting their jobs and becoming real estate experts and speculators. And that's not what's happening now across all the markets. It's fundamentally sustainable, and you have this benefit of the change in the tax law that just sort of you throw onto the pile. And that's what's very different about this. I was very uncomfortable in 2003, when everybody is a rocket scientist and sort of, prices always go up forever, and it wasn't about the market itself, about the economy. It was about something else that was external, credit. This go around, it's not like that. And that's what's impressed me about what's been happening over the last 3 or 4 years here.
Well, and Jonathan, I'm sure you can shed some light, like statistically, about this, but when we last spoke on a panel together, we talked about some of the statistics in terms of appreciation of home values year over year and how stable certain areas of South Florida are. And Boca Raton has wonderfully been this perfect anomaly. I mean, there are certain highly affluent pockets of real estate in the Boca Raton market that it's like there's no sign of slowing, and it's
right.
10-50% year over year.
Right. It's what you're seeing is modest price growth.
Completely sustainable.
Yeah, fairly, heavy levels of sales from an historical context, and inventory that's not high. That's what's so different. It's interesting. One of the things, and I just want to point out as being someone that's very New York centric in terms of being on the ground, is that there's this saying. It's my favorite saying. I got it on the internet, so it has to be true. Which is the plural of anecdotal is not data. So with that disclaimer, I'm going to tell you that we do a lot of work in private. We have an evaluation appraisal firm that covers the New York City metro area in addition to these market studies. And I can tell you that private banking groups, their clients are all talking about this, like they're percolating. One of the comments that Jay made earlier was that the process is starting, and I made the concept that we're coming up to the ballpark. The process is starting. We're not in it yet. And I think that's a good sort of context for this. You're right in sort of the early days of this process. one of the things we really are seeing, and I'm telling you, with the high, the high level, so the high end valuation of science we do, that there always seems to be some sort of Florida connection now. And just as an aside, Greenwich, Connecticut, which has had its problems because of Wall Street's lackluster performance over the last decade, their local papers are running all kinds of stories about South Florida, because that's what their readers want to read about. I think that's kind of, you never see that before. So you're starting to see this sort of thing, this sort of thing percolate and become mainstream conversation in the Northeast. And while you're writing your check for your taxes. So I don't know, do you guys like paying taxes? I'm not a big fan.
I'd rather be paying taxes than not be paying taxes.
Okay, yes, okay, all right.
Two questions for Jonathan.
Yeah.
Do you really want to go to a Knicks game, and when are you moving here?
So the first answer is only because my son loves the Knicks, and he's still mad at me for teaching him to be a fan when he was a little kid. So that's a problem we're going to work out. And my sister actually lives in Delray, so
So soon, we can count on you as a client.
Well, someday. But anyway, what I'd love to do is I'd love to, there's going to be no test, but I'd love to, if anybody has any questions in the audience, we'd love to. You have to ask us questions. You can't just sit there.
Well, while you're thinking of questions.
Yeah.
Oh, go ahead.
The city's expanding, top-notch, everything. What is the town doing regarding upgrading the infrastructure, such as the water quality and all that?
Okay, so right now we have something called the ISIP program where our municipal services team, and because there is a demand on our services, obviously police services, fire services, but they're going through and fixing the infrastructure. We have high level technology, way out of my scope, that shows the water pipes, the main drainage out to the ocean infrastructure. We get our data from the ocean under the water. So we're constantly working on those programs, and it's something our communications team is working to get the word out, because we do a lot of stuff behind the scenes as a municipality that we do all the time, and we've been doing as we went from 30,000 residents to 60,000 residents, now we're 94,000 residents. But now people want to know more, so we're making that more transparent. But it's ongoing, for sure.
Right. And that's how you keep attracting
Absolutely. It's a common question from,
talent and
absolutely.
corporations. Right,
And when we have companies move in, they want to know, what happens in the case of a hurricane? Is there a structure that I could be safe in? And the Innovation Campus can run 13 days on their generators. These are important, expensive investments into moving companies in, and of course residents.
I also think it's important to note that with every new expensive building being built and sold, the
Correct.
tax base increases.
Correct.
So this city has
Huge.
more money.
Fees
And
for
that's
corporate
where-
tax,
Yeah,
and
and
yes.
all of it is enhanced and stimulated by development. Developers are actually responsible for increasing the budget of cities because they
Correct.
provide more tax revenue.
Absolutely.
A question in the back.
Yeah, hi, this is actually specifically to Jay. Hey, Jay.
Hi, Ed Bogan.
We're talking about 25% growth, like I think someone said in the next 10 years. Where are the jobs actually going to go? Because I know what the implications are for residential real estate. Where do you see those people working? Are they going to become commuters just to Miami? Is there going to be a much wider group of office development here in Boca and the surrounding area? What are your thoughts on that?
I think that there are certain things that are happening in the state of Florida that are making commuting much more viable, like the Virgin Bright Line. People are now taking the opportunity to commute without having to get onto 95. I also think people are becoming much more sensitive to working where they live. And because of that, you're seeing people come to Boca and instill themselves in this community so that they can attract a higher caliber of employees, and that employee can ride a scooter, walk to work. In fact, in most major cities across the country, because of the problems we're all facing with transportation, people are wanting to work and live as close as possible. But that will not hinder the opportunity to take public transportation, which we're working on several different components of public transportation. Tri-Rail's looking at some options, Uber, Birds, whatever those other things are. People are really taking them. In fact, I spoke to somebody this week, it was a banker that I was on a panel with earlier this week, and he said he had never gone more than 2 blocks from his office until he found this bird. And now he goes to an area in downtown Miami that he had never even seen before, and he was fascinated to know that it had one of his favorite restaurants and all these other great things. So people are resorting to different modes of transportation to be able to get to where they want to get. And I think we're doing our best to try to build products that are differentiated. And I wanted to make that point clearly. One of the things that we take pride in at Douglas Elliman is making sure that we bring to the market different types of products to meet the demands of the discerning buyers in the different categories and profiles. So it would be foolish of us to recommend to a developer to build another large, beautiful, branded residential product in this market. It would compete directly with the residences of Mandarin Oriental. So we're developing products and giving our developers direction to develop products that are different sizes so that there is a product that will meet the needs of that $150,000 a year employee as much as there are products that will meet that $1 million a year employee or owner. So I think honestly, Ed, people are going to travel if they have to travel. It depends on what their profile is. Are their children in school in a particular place? Is their job only available in a particular market? Do they actually have to travel to their job, or can they work remotely? And I think that we're really doing a good job in Florida, to the best of our abilities, without the ability to expand roads in every market, of providing alternative modes of transportation.
If I could just jump on that for a second, even through our incentive program, which we launched just at the city level, not even including the state as a whole, in 2010, 10,000 jobs have been created, high-paying jobs, but we're seeing a shift in how we're developing our agreements, because a lot used to have to be, you had to be in an office, and you had to be 9 to 5, for the most part, to qualify. Now we have 10% or 20% telecommute. We allow that now at the state level because we see the shift of people wanting to be in an urban core and working telecommuting and things of that nature. So you just have to stay ahead of these things, and being progressive, focus on top of that. But it is an important thing to decipher and to factor in with relocation.
I'd like to just throw in there, at various price points, ultra luxury, luxury, and like even just our median price range in Boca Raton, we are finding that buyers are specifically asking for a workspace in their home. So this has to be a trend that is gaining traction, like IRL in real life. It's not just a concept that people are able to telecommute and work from home. It's actually something they're specifically asking for, and we're having to provide.
Well, that's been the big push in development over the last decade, is the concept of new urbanism, walkability, you know, that you can get places relatively conveniently. There's a sort of a push away from sort of driving 30 minutes to pick up a loaf of bread, you know, that sort of orientation. And we're seeing that in a lot of suburban communities around New York City, that even now in the suburban markets, the demand that's most intense is closer to the central business district. Like, it's really changed. Instead of being somewhere remote, they want to be kind of where the action is. And you're seeing that, a microcosm that across, not just Boca, but you're seeing that across a lot of the other cities in South Florida that we track. Do we have another question? Yeah.
I do. One comment and then one question. The comment here is, for the first time in American history, we have 4 generations of wealth that are, well, the millennials are getting on. But the biggest ones, 10,000 baby boomers a day are moving, okay? So they're moving either to South Florida, to Tennessee, or to Arizona and the Carolinas, which is actually where they're going. So that's interesting. My question to you is, how do you distinguish between high-end individual wealthy incomes and ultra-high? Because there's a difference between the two. So at the Mandarin, what are you looking for?
So it's an interesting question that you ask, and I'm going to answer a different question and then circle back to it, because that's how I roll. So there's a difference in what one has in terms of wealth and what one chooses to spend in terms of wealth. So there are many people who are very affluent, and they do not want the pinnacle of luxury. They're not interested in that. They're maybe interested in something else, and they do something else with their wealth. So it's less about how high net worth someone is, and more about digging in and having conversations with those people as they make their way to Florida about what's important to them. Because it may not be that they want to buy the, most expensive thing that they possibly can. And I'm not sure if I accidentally answered your question.
I'll answer it in a little more detail. I mean, we track through our global partner, Knight Frank, ultra high net worth global spending patterns. We define ultra high net worth as an individual or family that has a net worth of in excess of $60 million. We're talking about a very, very small percentage of the population, global population. Where on the marketing side, on the development marketing side, we look for people that can afford our product. And typically that person is someone that is not looking to shy away from luxury. They're not looking to spend necessarily just enough, but they want all of the benefits, amenitization, cachet of living in a uber luxury product. Interestingly, and we've studied this because we represent, I think, every major branded luxury project in South Florida right now, the real value on a branded luxury product is realized on the resale. It's not as evident in the original purchase. So there is a real value. Most high-end buyers today, particularly those that are coming from markets like New York City, are extraordinarily disciplined in their decision-making process, and they want to understand that, so they'll look to data to understand how are other branded luxury products selling, and is there a premium. When they realize that there is a premium, it helps them to justify their decision. We don't, as sales and marketing professionals, we don't have the opportunity to gauge, evaluate, or discriminate against what one's perceived income is versus what they may actually have. And just the other day, I was with an individual who, no joke, told me as I met him in his flip-flops, jean shorts that were cut off, and a t-shirt and a baseball hat. He just sold his company for $150 million, and he told me about how he's been driving the same car, which now has no air conditioning, lives in a different market where it's not as warm, no air conditioning, and he's owned the car for so long that the roof is pink because the paint is all oxidized, and the man is extraordinarily wealthy. So one of the things we know how to do is never to discriminate a buyer. But I'll make one more comment. You are 100% right, and I talk about this all the time. The significant portion of our population that is now in the baby boomer empty nester stage. It's a huge proponent of our value proposition in Florida, because more and more empty nesters, baby boomers, retirees are focused on Florida for all the reasons that they've historically been focused on Florida. Great lifestyle, great golf course communities, great communities to live in, great food, all the other things that benefit us. So we are in the what?
We're still working.
Exactly.
That's the misconception about baby boomers. We're still working.
And but that doesn't necessarily hinder the baby boomer from making their purchase here, because they believe that the market values in South Florida are going up. So they say, hey, look, I want to get in now. And the Canadians, which we saw move here or buy here, they're like, look, our dollar is strong. The market is low. We want to capitalize on it. If you compare a luxury product in New York City today to a luxury product in South Florida, it's easily 1/3 of the price here. And that's compelling to somebody that's moving from a market like that. So I think, like in many ways, when we had the last financial disaster, it was a perfect storm of negativity, from banking to real estate to all the other things, automotive. We now have a perfect storm of opportunity. A significant part of our population that wants to be here or buy here, tax reform, and a particularly strong evolution of both the residential, retail, cultural, and lifestyle components of our market. And I sincerely have seen, and we as Douglas Elliman have been a part of, an evolution in that area. We've seen museums, performing arts facilities, art galleries, restaurants, schools.
Right, all the cultural services.
Avenue School from New York is moving to Miami now at a huge investment, because they recognize that more and more of their clients are coming here. So we are really in, I think, one of the most opportunistic markets in the entire country, and maybe in the world. We're actually ranked 15th most desirable market to invest in globally, which it's a big world, and if we are 15th, that's a pretty big statement as to global recognition of our market. So I'm very bullish.
I'd like to piggyback on something that Jay said, which is when we're speaking with buyers, I think that people got really smart in the last recession. A lot of them learned a lot during that time. And one of the things that buyers, by and large, are really interested in is, what's my exit? So, you probably have heard the saying, you make your money on the buy side, right? So people are very concerned with, okay, hypothetically, I need to cycle out in 5 years. Am I gonna lose my shirt, right? And so they are really focused on economies, cities, projects,
Right.
where it is predictable.
The underlying basis for housing value.
Exactly,
Right.
exactly. So all of the underlying things in the city, in addition to the product that they're buying, whether it be a single family house or a branded development, they are very concerned with what's the anticipated predictable appreciation of that asset.
Interesting. Any other questions? Yeah, in the back there. To me? Do I owe you money? Or, no, okay.
Is the Upper East Side co-op market in New York City dead in the water, or is it just taking a breather?
All right, so for those of you that don't know the Upper East Side co-op market, I'm assuming everybody does now. So when we talk about luxury or the high-end co-op market, Park, Fifth Avenue, and the quarter in between, that part of the Upper East Side, that is the softest, weakest luxury market in New York City. And the reason is that condominiums have become ubiquitous and the buyers don't want to put up with a board, right? And so that has been a key change in the market, is that the younger demo, like the ones that we were talking about, is going to the condo and not to the co-op. As I always joke, you know, you have that 50-pound weight limit for a dog, and you have the weigh. I always want to go to a weighing-in ceremony, like, you know, like, oh, your dog's 1 pound over, you can't buy this $12 million home. But I bring that up because it's invasive.
Yorkie, right?
It's invasive, and the younger people coming up aren't tolerant of that. So it's at a disadvantage. So that's, and then as a general comment, Upper East Side Co-op, it's just not seeing the boom that we've seen on the condo side.
Do you think it'll come back? I'm just curious, do you think it'll come back?
I think everything's a cycle, you know. So you know, I think one of the observations I've learned over 30 years of doing this is that when markets go up and markets go down, they go down or up forever, but they don't. You know, they sort of, you know, up and down and sort of trend higher over time. But there's always this sort of fatalistic about like the Upper East Side, forever. That's like never, like, you know, 20 years from now, they're going to be free. They're going to be giving Park Avenue 5,000 square apartment. You buy them for $5, right?
I'm going to take it off Apple.
Right.
No, but all the private schools are on the Upper East Side still.
Right, and so.
There's a thing about the Upper East Side.
Right, so it has an anchor, like, for that kind of amenity. But I guess I just caution you in you know, over analyzing that we do have cycles, and right now that market is being tested against the new product, which is condominium.
Okay, thank you.
Any other? Yeah, over here.
I have a question for the tax fellow. How, maybe you could comment on how vulnerable you think people like us are. We spend about 6 months in Florida, Island Beach. We have a home in Westport, Connecticut, and about 4 months there. We have a home in San Francisco, and we spend about 5 weeks a year there. The rest of the year it stays empty.
Where do you declare your residency?
Say again?
Where do you declare your residency when you file?
Florida.
Sorry?
Florida.
Oh, okay.
We were here over 6 months.
Okay.
There.
So the question is?
The question is, if you have any idea whether Connecticut accepts something like that, because like my wife has a small private practice, consulting practice in Connecticut.
Just list it as a non-resident state for you.
Yeah,
And
that's,
you would-
that's,
you would-
that's what, that's
you would
what I'm
allocate, of
doing.
course.
I'm just waiting for, you know, Connecticut doesn't want you to go so easy.
No, I think as long as you be upfront with Connecticut and allocate that portion of income to Connecticut, pay the appropriate taxes on that money that you're making there, they're fine and happy, and you can rest easy at night. And that's approval.
Okay, last question.
As a closing remark, do you think we should also be making notes to Mayor Bill de Blasio of New York?
Yes. Yes, yes, yes.
So So I
Yes.
think the answer is no comment. But first of all, I want to thank all of our panelists for tremendous information. And thank all of you for coming here. And we have cocktails and hors d'oeuvres for you to enjoy. And you can talk to the panelists directly as well. Thank you.
Excited to his wedding. Back to back. Oswald on the ground. Yeah. All right, so I'm not the only one. No, you're not the only one. I couldn't quite.
Alexa, thank you for trying.
It's a failure. No, it's fine.